Samia Yaba Nkrumah is another one of our guests, and she is, as you know, the daughter of Ghana's first president, Kwame Nkrumah, and his wife, and from Egypt. And she is, Samia is really, I mean, her mother, Fatia Rit, really raised her with great respect and honor to her father. And so after the coup in 1966, she left Ghana, but she came back. And she went to school at Achimota. You may have heard of that famous school. But the unique circumstances of Pan-African birth and cultural inclinations underpin her belief in African unity. A belief, and political conviction that relies as much on the many texts of her father as it does on her own studies. I mean, she studied at the University of London at the School of Oriental and African Studies. She is, we call her honorable. You know, in the U.S. we don't say that often, but we have to say that internationally. She's Honorable Samia Yaba Nkrumah, the chairman and leader of the Convention People's Party and the executive director of the Kwame Nkrumah Pan-African Center in Ghana. And you know her as her being a member of Parliament. Born in 1960, the year of Ghana's status, declared its status as a republic. She's the second child of Kwame and Fatia. She has three siblings, Gorky Gamal, a journalist who lives in Egypt, Sekou, who lives in Accra, and an older half-brother, Professor Francis Nkrumah, a retired lecturer and consultant pediatrician who also lives in Accra. Samia and her maternal, Brother Moussa, you want to bring that here so we can, Clyde, you can accompany him, please. For many years, the family lived in Egypt and returned to Ghana in the 70s, leaving again in the 80s. Samia, who is fluent in Arabic, Italian, and English, and has worked for many years as a journalist and a media consultant, was educated in Ghana, Egypt, and the UK. She holds a Master's of Arts degree in literature and is married and has one son, Kwame. Returning to Ghana permanently in 2007, after many years of living abroad, Samia signaled her intention to rekindle the vision of Kwame Nkrumah. And that's how we know her most in the diaspora. I mean, when she signaled that she was going to take up the baton of her father, it electrified black people in the diaspora. We were saying, wow, somebody finally in Ghana is going to take that up. So she did this by joining the Convention People's Party and contesting in the 2008 parliamentary election in the Jamora constituency and winning decisively. In 2011, she made history again by winning the chairpersonship of the CPP. This win made her the only female leader of a political party in Ghana, and also the youngest to occupy such a position. So in 2011, she was voted one of the most influential Ghanaians in a TV Ghana poll. If you just keep up with Ghana news, you see her all the time. She's, you know, some people, and I like this, Samia, when people say that you're a controversial figure. I like that, because that's what they say about me. Right? I like that. Because when they say you're controversial, it means that you must be doing something good. You know what I mean? Because you have, you know, people want to contest you. So she is just really incredible. The international press has called her, has said, the new Mandela is a woman. The prestigious American newspaper, the Huffington Post, described her impact on Ghana African politics, saying that she's the founder of the Kwame Nkrumah Pan-African Center. I've already told you that. And also Africa Must Unite. This is a brilliant, strong, dynamic sister with a beautiful presentation of her father's vision, but not just her father's vision, her own vision. You know, sometimes we want to say it's just her father. No, no, no. Her father's vision, but her vision. She has her own, she embraced, and not only embraced the vision, but she has her own vision of the Pan-African dream and ideal. And she, of course, is working for that. So we're happy, Samia, to have you here at the MOLEFI Kete.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
But I don't regret it. Actually, I've been so inspired. Yes, so inspired. So in one afternoon, we met Kwame Nkrumah and Cheikh Tidiane. I don't regret it at all. And I'm happy my brother, Gadio, put so much pressure on me to come here. Yes. It is not a coincidence, I hope, that we are all here today.
Yes.
You know, as they were speaking, I recalled what our father told us the day of the coup, 1966. I was a little under 6 years of age. We just left Ghana. We had, after a great adventure, the whole day with the soldiers and the coup activists. We managed, thanks to President Gamal Abdel Nasser and Egypt, we managed to leave that same day and arrive in Egypt in the early evening. Kwame Nkrumah was on his way to Hanoi for that peace mission. So by that time, he had arrived in China, and he called us. He spoke to each and every one of us, our mother and the children. And I remember when he spoke to me, I remember his words as if it were yesterday. Our father used to call me Yaba by my Ghanaian name. That is for girls born on Thursday who come from a certain part of, there are variations to the name, from a certain part of Ghana, that is the western region, the Nzema ethnic group. So my middle name is Yaba, and that's how he always addressed me. And he said, Yaba, you have to be strong. You have to be strong. The secret of life is to have no fear. And indeed, this is in one of his books, The Axioms of Kwame Nkrumah. Wow. Yes, the secret of life is to have no fear. And indeed, I heard him loud and clear, but I was afraid. It took me over 30 years to return to Ghana. And what brought me back? One of his books, Africa Must Unite. A wonderful book which I recommend to all young people, just as an introduction into the unfinished business of national liberation, the unfinished business that we must take up. And I realized, after having read Africa Must Unite for the 10th time, that Kwame Nkrumah's political thought or ideology, or whatever we want to call it, is a living ideology. It is something that must be practiced, not just talked about.
Exactly.
It must be practiced.
That's right.
And the ideas in that book gave me the courage, finally, to return home, enter active politics, knowing it's not going to be easy, it hasn't been easy, it won't be easy anytime in the near future. But it must be done. Some of us must go back, work on the ground, have a base, build a constituency, and become decision makers in our country. Like Cheikh Gadio said, what Africa needs more than anything else today are leaders with a vision, honest leadership, honest, uncorrupt leadership, politicians of integrity, more than anything else, visionary politicians with integrity. But Kwame Nkrumah used to say also, and that I remember, that he's an African domiciled in Ghana. That's how he described himself. I'm an African domiciled in Ghana. And many of us believe that his outstanding contribution could never have happened if he didn't have a Pan-Africanist mind. Because he was a leader who thought big. He had a strong base. He had to have it to be able to do what he achieved, to make Ghana a model of development and economic self-reliance. That was his aim, to make Ghana a model. He had to have it, but he thought big. He thought like a Pan-Africanist. He founded a Pan-Africanist party. The party I belong to today, yes, it's embattled and weak, but that's because properties were confiscated. It was banned for decades. It's only at the turn of the century that we managed to get the name back by going to court, and now we are battling with getting some of our assets deconfiscated. Wow. So we understand why we are in that limited position for now. But this was a Pan-Africanist party, and it remains so. Yes. Meaning, we have a vision for Ghana, we have a vision for Africa, and we have a vision for all Africans. Just as Gadio said. Africa will never be fully prosperous until unless Africans outside the continent play an active role in its development. We know that, and we take cue from Kwame Nkrumah, or surgical Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, as we call him. Immediately after independence, after he made that famous declaration that we didn't understand. We didn't understand. Many people who we talked to in Ghana would tell you, yes, they were just listening, they were excited, but they didn't understand. What does it mean? The independence of Ghana is meaningless unless it is linked up with the total liberation of the African continent. You know, everybody was looking, thinking, what does it mean? But he meant every word of that statement. Actually, that whole speech, the independence speech, if you look at it today, it almost sums up the vision. From, he talked about Gavi, he talked about the African personality, everything is there. Our economic self-reliance and economic independence, everything is in that one speech. But that very famous statement, Kwame Nkrumah went on to practice it. Yes. Immediately after independence, Ghana was essential. Ghana played a crucial role in the freedom and liberation of other African countries. So that by the year 1960, 17, which we call the Great Year of Africa, 17 African countries had gained independence. Ghana helped with funds, resources, training, everything. there are many activists from Southern Africa who got Ghanaian passports, were given Ghanaian passports so that they can study abroad. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for them. So Ghana under Kwame Nkrumah played a very crucial role in liberation. But that statement went beyond the liberation, political freedom. Because Kwame Nkrumah used to say also that political independence was just the first step to our socio-economic and political emancipation as Africans. It should have been followed, closely followed, by our plan for economic independence and what Gadio talked about, the political union, or the Union of African States, or of course, our favorite, the United States of Africa. In the early 60s, aside from helping with liberation movements, that was the time when Ghana worked very, very closely with Africans outside the continent. Almost every single prominent black personality touched Ghanaian soil.
Yes.
You name them and you would know they were there. I don't know if you ever heard that a story. We say story because there's no absolute confirmation, but we like to believe it's true. But the symbolism of that story is powerful. On the eve of independence, after Kwame Nkrumah declared Ghana free forever, and fireworks went up, and everyone was excited, Richard Nixon was at the time the official leader of the leader of the official American delegation. And the story goes like this. He sees an African in front of him in the midst of the celebration. He taps his shoulder. So how does it feel to be free? And this man turns round and says, I wouldn't know, I'm from Alabama. The story has it that this man was no other than Martin Luther. Yes, and indeed, Martin Luther King Jr. was in Ghana in 1957.
Can you speak in the mic?
Oh, sorry. Yes. Was indeed in Ghana in 1957 to witness the celebrations of the new independent Ghana. It is there in his biography. And these two men, because just think about the significance of this, these two men would never have met in 1957 in this country. Just think about it. But they met in little Ghana. They met in Ghana. And there are pictures. I don't know if some of you have seen it, but there are pictures of those two men in Accra in 1957. So this is what a Pan-African mindset can do. It can do the impossible. It can do the impossible. This is why some of us are determined. We are determined to emulate even a fraction of what Kwame Nkrumah did. Oh, sorry. Yes, I was unaware of it. I hope you could hear me. Yeah. This is why some of us are determined to emulate this great leader, the African of the millennium, as he was popularly voted by the BBC survey in 1999, confounding everybody because he even came ahead of the great Nelson Mandela I hear the story has it, and that again is unconfirmed. I don't want you to think I only like to tell stories. But the story has it that the BBC conducted the survey knowing very well that Nelson Mandela would be chosen as the African of the millennium. And there was this, I heard from insiders in the BBC, that they were so surprised that it was this African leader who passed on decades ago. But it gives you an idea of how far Kwame Nkrumah's tentacles went all over the world. The non-aligned movements, the African, the Asian and African, Asian and Latin American Solidarity Group, the South-South cooperation. This is the real meaning of Pan-Africanism. Feeling the strength of the continent and its people, as our great scientist Cheikh Diop Jr. has just shown us. This is the belief in ourselves that we must struggle. We must struggle to let it come out. You know, just before I came, actually yesterday, the European Commissioner for Agriculture, interestingly enough, for Agriculture and Rural Development, was in Accra. And they invited leaders of political parties to dialogue with him, government authorities. And of course, we understand where the cooperation is going. We understand that we have to battle with two things. The introduction of genetically modified foods. In Ghana, we just 2 years ago passed a law.
Yes.
Without realizing the significance, the serious implications. And the other issue is the economic partnership agreement with the European Union, where if we do sign, we've initialed, some African countries have initialed separately, and that is the danger we are talking about. We've initialed and we hope we will not sign. But if we do sign, it means opening up our markets to superior products, which will in effect mean that our manufacturing capability will be completely crippled. Which brings me to the other very important aspect of the unfinished business, because there are two. United States of Africa, and the second is our economic self-reliance. Now, Kwame Nkrumah linked both, because what he was advising us, we will never be able to meet the basic needs of our people. We'll never be able to be economically self-reliant if we are not united. And we can see that with these trade agreements where we are forced to bargain separately. How can Ghana with 24 million compete with China, the European Union, the United States of America? It's impossible. If you think about it, the Ivory Coast and Ghana, two neighboring countries. Actually, Kwame Nkrumah's ethnic group is split between both countries. Between both of them, Ghana and La Côte d'Ivoire, we control the cocoa production in the whole world. If only these two countries, just imagine, just these two countries come together in cocoa production and processing, it will revolutionize the whole cocoa industry. And we, Africans, will gain control of our resources. Because till now, because we are divided into little economically unviable statelets, we do not control our resources. The resources we know that are immense, we do not control them, and therefore we do not control our economies. And therefore, our people are still bereft of basic needs: potable water, clean drinking water, sanitation, very, very poor, and the cause of many of the diseases that are totally completely unavoidable now. Basic access to health, basic services. Till today, despite our wealth, and our father used to say Africa is very wealthy, very rich, yes. It is Africans who are poor. Yeah. So despite our great wealth, we have not managed, till today, 50 years after independence, to meet the basic needs of our people. And that is because principally we are economically unviable statelets. And the only way we can have prosperity, we can create wealth for all Africans, is if there is a strong, unified political machinery that controls all the other aspects of unity. And this is the fast-track approach, or the original approach of the Organization of African Unity, before actually it became. The original idea was that you have a unified political machinery that gives life, guidance, direction, energy to all other aspects of integration. Because without that, it would be very difficult. And allow me to quote something that Kwame Nkrumah said how many years ago? 50 years ago. I hope I have it. Yes. And that is when he was pushing for this grand idea of a United States of Africa. And he said, he prioritized 3 objectives. This I will paraphrase before I come to the quote. He prioritized 3 main objectives. 1, overall economic planning on a continental basis. Overall economic planning for the continent's development, because he was saying that the optimum zone of development is the whole continent. Number 2, a unified military and defense strategy. Imagine, from that time, the threat of conflicts and confusion and interference was already there. A unified military and defense strategy. And number 3, a unified foreign policy and diplomacy. And that, of course, stems from the first 2. Unified foreign policy and diplomacy. Imagine if we had listened. And he warned. We believe that as long as Africa remains balkanized, no single state in the continent can really be prosperous. our economic independence resides in our African Union. Nothing will be of avail. Nothing will be of avail except the united act of a united Africa. I'm struggling to find that quote, but it's okay. I found part of it, and it says, the vision of a United States of Africa transcends the limitations of tinkering with interterritorial associations within customs union, trade agreements, intercommunication services, and the like. Because this tinkering is not based on the widest possible extension of land and population. I love the word tinkering, because I think people who've served, who've been foreign ministers and presidents and so forth, and ministers would understand how much tinkering has been going on over the years. So some of us are very passionate about making sure that we become decision makers. Because if Africa doesn't have Pan-African leaders, it will be impossible to realize the unity project. We have to understand that. It will be impossible. It is not beyond reach, because that is what we used to say about independence, that it's impossible to unchain ourselves from colonialism, but it happened. So it is not impossible to unite, but it can only be possible with a certain mindset. Our leaders have to have a Pan-African mindset. And this brings me to why I said this is not a coincidence. I hope and I pray that we can find a way to work together. One of the limitations of many of our leaders in Africa is that they are not listening to our intellectuals. I call intellectuals our deep thinkers. I don't think we are listening to our deep thinkers sufficiently. I don't think we are considering the advice that they give us. You know, the 7-year development plan of 1963 in Ghana, some of us swear by this plan. I have it. I have it. And if you look at it today, you just have to do some small changes to adapt it to changing circumstances, and it will be valid today. Sure. If a country like Ghana or any of the neighboring countries picks up this plan today and revises it just to adapt it to our situation today, it will be valid. It will help. So we have a blueprint. The blueprint is there. We are lucky that we have a blueprint. And the story of this plan, if you know the story behind this plan, African and Friends of Africa, intellectuals, economists, planners, sat for months in Ghana and outside Ghana to come up with this 7-year development plan, which would have been the breakthrough, economic breakthrough of Ghana, if it was allowed to be implemented. But it took deep thinkers Africans from everywhere and some friends of Africa to sit and conceive of this plan, pushed by vision. So I want us to reflect on these things. I don't want today to be a one-off encounter. It is my privilege to be here today and to interact with you. Much of the attention I get, I know, is simply because I represent a vision. I represent a vision that was truncated. And I'm grateful for that. I want to use that in all humility. I want to use that representation so that we can rekindle that vision for all of us. Our father believed in all Africans. He was confident as an African. He was very confident. You know, when we were researching for the library, someone showed me a clip of President Kennedy rushing to meet him, running to meet Kwame Nkrumah coming down the steps of a plane. Can you imagine today an American president rushing to meet an African president? I don't think so. Seriously, yes. Seriously. So let this not be a one-time encounter. Let us think of how we are going to help ourselves. Africa needs you. And as far as I'm concerned, I don't know, I don't use the word diaspora. I don't use it. Let Africans outside Africa tell me they are not Africans. But as far as I'm concerned, we are all Africans. So please, let us work together. Let us make that dream come true. Let us make Africans prosperous. Let us restore our dignity.
Yes, Lord.
Restore our dignity. Let us do it. I thank you.
Wow.